This is Lydia, the lifestyle coach, and so excited that you guys are on today. We have a really awesome interview with an expert that is going to be so meaningful for just a topic that comes up over and over. So I'm Lydia, the lifestyle coach, and I help people to be free of eating disorders, just like done with food crazies like overeating, binge eating, bulimia. And something that comes up over and over is, okay, I'm free. Like a lot of times this is, a 30-year struggle, a 40-year struggle. And when you're free from like this huge issue of an eating disorder, then the really fun thing is that you get to play, like you get to like improve your life. You get to take care of the other stuff that is really important. But when you have sort of this daily thing you're struggling with, and that's out of the way, then okay, like what else can we do? Like how can we have better health? How can we have a better life? How can we get rid of these things that we've just sort of been suffering through every day once we have some more, mental energy and some more space in our life? So one thing that comes up so often is autoimmune disease. That is something that a lot of people struggle with. And it's something that with the people that I coach, they get their food under control, and then they actually get to see, okay, what's happening with my body? And there are really some things I need to take care of here. And that is not my expertise. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical person. And so I want to provide you guys with amazing resources for you, like as a whole person. So that's why we have these fun interviews. And I am so excited to have Kirstin Carey on the show today, who is an expert at this stuff. So welcome to the show. So happy you are here.
Hello. I'm happy to be here too.
Hello, hello. And so I would love for everybody to just sort of get to know you first. Why don't you just start off, just tell us your story. Tell us why you do what you do and what sort of your own personal journey is.
Yay, the story. So about 10 years ago, I was miserable, emotionally, mentally, and physically. And I started really presenting with lots of symptoms. Some of them had been around for years. I just thought that was the way I was, or my family was like that, like digestive issues. And I had horrible, horrible acne as an adult that I didn't have as a kid. My menstrual cycles were a mess. I was just having all these symptoms that were just starting to show up: hair loss, weight gain, especially in the midsection that I couldn't get off. And I had been an athlete my whole life. So, not being able to lose weight was really, really upsetting to me. Hormone imbalance. I mean, name it. I feel like I had it going on. And I started having these anaphylactic responses. Like randomly, I would have like my lip would swell out, or I'd get hives, or I couldn't breathe all of a sudden, or sneezing fits that I literally couldn't control. And I finally went to see an allergist, and they pricked me with a bunch of stuff. And they're like, yeah, well, you're allergic to wheat. And I'm like, what? I eat wheat all the time because I'm healthy, and I eat whole wheat pastas and all my low fat dairy and all the stuff that I thought was healthy for me. And she said, well, I don't know what to tell you. You're allergic to wheat and latex, and good luck. So I'm like, all right. So I started trying to figure that out, and then started realizing some of my symptoms would go away for a little while and not others. So I finally found a naturopath who started looking at other things. I had all these food allergies. She uncovered a bunch of other things. And then she's like, oh yeah, and you have celiac disease. I'm like, what? What is this? Like, what? So, and I was a healthy person. So she said, you have celiac disease, and that means that basically the lining of your gut is getting eaten away by eating gluten, and you can't have that either. And I'm like, so I was extremely spun out because, gluten was a big way of life for me, and I was really struggling with that. But then as time went on, I started doing these crazy restrictive diets, and I started doing all of this vegan for a while, and I actually screwed up and made my thyroid worse. And then Hashimoto's, which is another autoimmune condition, started to show up. And then my mother was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and my sister, and I started realizing all this stuff was happening, but I kept asking, well, why? Well, why is this happening? Well, it's hereditary. I'm like, yeah, but what, like, why? What's going wrong? So I spent years trying to figure it out. Finally ended up opening a restaurant, a healthy restaurant that was gluten-free, because I couldn't eat anywhere. And I went back to school for nutrition. And then I started learning what autoimmune disease really was. And then when I got a handle on that, was able to heal myself and figure out what the real issues were, my whole life turned around. And I look at the world very differently now, but we're seeing autoimmune conditions show up at a ridiculous rate for many reasons. And I know you and I can talk about how that's showing up, but I'm now completely off all medications. The only two foods I actually just don't eat are dairy or gluten. So I don't follow all these AIP restrictive diets and all the things that you find online. I'm not eating vegan. I'm not doing all these other restrictions. But no medications. I'm back to a healthy weight for me. I feel good. I don't have the energy dropping. I don't have that midsection weight gain anymore. I don't get the migraines that used to drive me to the floor. My menstrual cycle is normal. It's every 28 days. I can actually count on my watch when it's going to happen. I don't have the acne issues anymore. Like, so many things just went away. And so it really had me starting to wonder. So my husband then went back to school for nutrition, and the two of us now work together to stop symptoms of autoimmune disease and help people heal from the damage that was done without pharmaceuticals.
That is so awesome. And I love that. And I love what you said about like helping people to heal. I think that is such an important message that both of us are such an advocate of like, let's not, like you say, like live with it. Let's live without it. It's like, let's actually heal, not just manage this thing that you're doomed to for the rest of your life. So I love that. So help us understand your own journey is incredible. And I know you have such a great understanding of this stuff. So help us just like the basics. Like if we didn't know anything about it, what is autoimmune disease?
So in a nutshell, autoimmune disease is your immune system attacking healthy cells and tissues in your body faster than your body can make the healthy cells and tissues. So for Hashimoto's, for example, Hashimoto's is the autoimmune disease that attacks the thyroid. So your immune system is so confused that it mistakes your thyroid tissue to be something it wants to get rid of, and it starts attacking it. So celiac disease is the lining of the gut is what gets attacked. Rheumatoid arthritis, the small joints start getting attacked, and that's why you see pain for rheumatoid arthritis. So where we see people getting it wrong, especially the basic standard broken medical community, is that if your thyroid's being attacked, the medical community doesn't focus on the immune system. They focus on the thyroid, and they start giving medication to try to balance the thyroid. So here's an analogy. So if you were walking through and you saw on a playground, there was a little boy who was being beaten up by 4 other little boys. Would you run over to the little kid who was getting beaten up and put Band-Aids on his cuts? Or would you stop the other 4 boys from beating on him?
That's a great analogy. Yep.
Stop the little 4 boys from beating on him. The way the medical community goes about dealing with autoimmune conditions is they give you medications to try to just put Band-Aids on the beating up. They don't stop the immune system from attacking. So we focus on why is the immune system attacking in the first place? Why is the immune system so confused that it's attacking healthy cells and tissues? I mean, it's a form of suicide. Your body's attacking your own cells and tissues. So we focus on the immune system and stopping the attack so the body can actually heal, rather than just here's a bunch of medications, let's see if we can try to balance out the damage that's being done.
Yeah. I think it's amazing what happens when you get at the root of the issue. Your body is so good at healing itself. Yeah. Like your brain, I mean, this is something I see all the time. Like you just create the right environment for your brain to just heal itself, and it does.
Yep.
Your body's the same way. Like that's awesome. And I think it's really interesting too. Like, how does that start? Like, how does that happen? Why does your body start attacking itself?
Well, that's interesting. So there's 3 pillars, but I want to capitalize on what you just said. There's basically in the body, there's the central nervous system. There's pieces of the central nervous system that can't heal. Otherwise, the entire body can regenerate and heal if you give it long enough and the right information or the right tools. So you're so right. And most people don't understand that. Even the broken medical community, they don't understand the concept that the body can heal. They just think, well, once you're broken forever, and here's some medication. So I love that you already brought that up. But there's 3 pillars that cause autoimmune disease to surface. The first one is a predisposition, which means one of your parents had an autoimmune condition. They may have never been diagnosed. It may not have been looked for, but so many things are autoimmune conditions. Type 2 diabetes is actually fitting the autoimmune category now. Heart disease falls into the autoimmune category. There's so many other things, but they're the 2 biggest things hitting people, and they actually fall into autoimmune, and a lot of people don't know that. So first of all, is somebody's handed it down to you, one of your parents. The second thing that shows up, and you can't do anything about the predisposition if you've already got the predisposition, but you can do something about the other 2. The second one is the leaky gut, essentially, and compromised gut digestive system. When you've got leaky gut, what happens is foods and medications or anything you're putting into your system actually will slide through the gut lining and get into the bloodstream. The bloodstream's like, hey, I know I'm not supposed to see this stuff here, and it starts causing an inflammatory response. So leaky gut is a big problem. There's a bunch of things that cause leaky gut, which we can talk about in a second. But the third thing, and you and I have talked about this a lot offline, is trauma or a trigger. And typically it's an emotional trigger. So it could have been sexual and mental or emotional abuse. Usually the trigger happens somewhere between the ages of, or before the age of 12, but it still could have been something later, like someone in your family that was close to you dies. You dramatically have to move to a new area of the country. You get divorced, you lose a job. Anything that the body sees is just one step too far, that it just can't handle it anymore. And it just allows the immune system just to get confused and start the attack, which is why we spend so much time, and I know you do too, on the emotional components of how the body responds when the emotions are not what it can handle.
Yeah. And I think that's beautiful with those, pairing those things together, right? Of like, hey, your body can heal itself. You're not broken. Mm-hmm. And hey, maybe you had trauma happen to you, but like we can sort out the trauma and we can go through all of it, or we can just say, hey, the trauma happened. This is the response. Now, how do we just heal it, right? How do we move forward instead of like, you know, constantly going back or like, oh, why did I, you know, why was it that, you know, I inherited this predisposition? It's like, all of that's irrelevant. Like, let's just like get better and get done. But know exactly what's happening so that you can do that. So I love that approach. That's awesome.
Right. And you're not just destined for disease. So if you have autoimmune condition and your child then starts presenting with some of these symptoms, that doesn't mean that you're a terrible parent. You've handed all these horrible things off to them. What it means is you have this brilliant chance to now stop the trajectory of your child ending up surfacing with an autoimmune condition if you focus on healing her gut, making sure her gut is healthy, and making sure that she's managing her stressors correctly and effectively. So you actually have impact over your kids, and you can stop the trajectory of what's going on. Because what's interesting is they've proven scientifically that stress will actually push its way into your cells and tissues. The body will look at those cells and tissues and go, I think these are things we don't want, and it will attack them if they're filled with all the trauma.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the most underrated issues is like we treat everything in sort of this materialist way when like stress is a real thing, you know, like with the women that I work with, it's like they've just been ignoring sort of this cascade of thoughts that's happening all the time that's pulling them from place to place, that's causing binge eating. And it's like, no, like your stress and your thoughts and what's happening internally in your mind, it really matters. Like people don't die from just physical things. They die from like the physical things that happen because of the emotional and the mental things. It's like, it is a real thing that I think people think of sort of like a luxury. Like, oh, well, maybe I'll pick up meditation as like this luxury. And it's like, no, actually it's equally as important as like, you know, like drink water, eat food, like exercise, meditate. Like what's happening mentally is so important. So I love that you have that clear emphasis.
Mm-hmm. And so many of our clients have gone through other programs before they found us, and they were on some crazy restrictive diets and hundreds of dollars of supplements every month and medications. And they're so convinced that's what it is. And I'm like, well, what's going on with your stress? How are you managing that? And they're like, oh, I'm fine. And you can like see the stress on them, but nobody's ever addressed that part. And I'm like, look, it's not the food at this point. It's not the tomatoes that causing the problem. It's not one more thing there. It is the way your body's managing stress. Because if your body thinks there's a bear standing in front of it, or it thinks there's a bear around the corner, it doesn't really matter because the brain actually responds the same way physiologically. So they just start showing up and they're not digesting. They're starting to shut their immune system down. When the body thinks a bear is coming, whatever that bear is in your life, it actually doesn't allow your body to heal because it suppresses the immune system. And the immune system's job is to help you heal and to protect you. It doesn't allow you to digest properly. If you're not digesting properly, you're not taking nutrients in from the foods you are eating. And it also actually suppresses your sex organs, which means your body isn't producing hormones the way that it needs to. So you're going to be exhausted. You're going to be tired. You're going to have all these other issues. You're going to have imbalance of hormones. You're not going to be digesting food, and your body can't protect it or heal it. So that's why we spend so much time on the trauma, the triggers, the emotional components. Because again, you could have the perfect diet and you could be taking the perfect supplements and not getting better because your body thinks it's in trouble.
Yeah. And I would think that even is like a spiral of more stress, right? I know that when we think it's so much all the little things, right? It's the tomatoes. I'm not eating the right tomatoes. It's
Right.
like the issue actually gets bigger and bigger and more stressful because we're so obsessed with all these little, I have to do everything right. I have to do everything perfect. Yeah. Exactly.
Perfect. Yeah. We do a whole series on how perfectionism is not a thing. And how if you think everything's going to be perfect, your brain's going to stay in that space of fear and panic all the time. And when your brain's in a state of panic, it actually teaches it to get into panic faster. So the more you stay in panic, and I know you talk about those stuff too, the more you stay in panic, the more you teach the brain, oh, panic is where we want to be. So it gets there faster and more easily, and it builds that muscle. And then the brain's like, everything's bad all the time. And then your whole body just responds to that.
But your brain is used to everything being bad all the time, and that becomes like the new norm. And you're literally developing habits of thought is what I call them, right? It's like, this is the knee-jerk reaction way to be. And again, like, don't think that can't be changed. Like, we recreate our brains, and like you're saying, we recreate our bodies all the time. All you need to do is to adjust, and you can heal these things. You can recreate these things. You created them in the first place. You can just change and then recreate something else.
Yep. Most people just created them by accident. They didn't realize it was happening. You can follow the same pattern to actually change it if you know how to do that. And that pattern can be shifted. But most people think, well, my thoughts are just my thoughts, and that's the way it is. I'm like, no, you can actually do them on purpose, which is kind of neat. And I love that, because we actually have control. But our conversation within our internal system is happening all the time. You just may be misinterpreting or misunderstanding that language. And it's teaching well, my body's doing this, it means this, and I need to listen to it. Because if you're not listening and you're not giving your body what it wants, it's going to show up with another symptom and another symptom and another symptom until you listen, and it's going to 2x4 you to back ahead with a symptom that you're going to be like, okay, I guess I'm listening now.
Yeah.
So it's how do you respond?
I know this pattern. I know that back in like my higher stress days before I, practice these sorts of principles that we talk about, it's like I would be so busy and so go all the time that I was a person that I took a break when I got sick and I couldn't work anymore. Like, it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to relax now. It's like my body just is forcing me to like stop doing things. And that is not a healthy way to live. I feel so much better now. So let's revisit, because I want to make sure to not miss this piece. You said a little bit about why leaky gut happens. So I just wanted to close that loop, because I think that's a really interesting piece.
Okay. So leaky gut, there's several things that'll be the cause of leaky gut. Most of it's what I like to think, to wrap your head around the concept of imbalance. So whatever your body feels is not balanced. So yeast in your system being imbalanced, you need a certain amount of yeast, but when it's out of balance, which a lot of people know as candida, a candida imbalance, that actually causes a leaky gut problem. It actually punches holes in the gut lining. So an imbalance of yeast. Imbalances of thought patterns and emotions actually cause an imbalance in a leaky gut problem to be going on. Imbalance of bacteria. And a lot of people say, oh, well, if I just take a probiotic, I should be fine. And I'm like, well, not necessarily. So are you eating foods that have good bacteria in them? Are you actually pushing your body to be around bad bacteria? They actually found people with animals in the house are more likely to have a good balance of good and bad bacteria, because you need a certain amount of bad bacteria in your system too. That because animals bring stuff in from the outside and they're a little bit more dirty and they're walking around in the grass and they got poop on their feet sometimes, that actually helps build a better immune system. But we now in this society think we need to overuse like bleach and everything else to kill off all this stuff, and that actually doesn't give your immune system a chance to push back. So imbalances in general, so of what's going on with the gut, imbalances of just foods in general, if you're just overdoing all of the, the nasty foods, but imbalances of thoughts and things like that. So it's pretty interesting, but imbalance is pretty much the core of the underlying issues.
Yeah, really interesting. And, one thing that, I've wondered as well is like, why, and maybe it does have to do, like what you said, like, like the imbalances and the stress and all of that. But it seems like people are just getting autoimmune disorders just like all the time now. It's just like a rampant thing. Like, what would you say has been the cause, or what is like your theory or understanding of why so many people get autoimmune disorders now?
Well, one, we live in a country, so if we're speaking just about the United States right now, We live in a country who prides ourselves on pushing ourselves to the limit, pushing too far. We are one of the few cultures that doesn't have a very set specific time where we take a break. We take a siesta, we take tea, we take, pray during the middle of the day. We don't have that in our culture. So like the go, 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 we're too busy, we're too this, we're too, like how many people do you know when you say, how are things? How was the holiday? Like, oh, it was crazy busy, or I'm just exhausted. We actually think that's a good thing. So that thought process right there is half the problem. But the other thing is because I don't find that what I call the broken medical community is getting why we are ending up with all of these autoimmune conditions. So when you realize that there's a predisposition and you can hand this off to the next level of people, and though the predisposition, again, can't be stopped necessarily, but you can help people with a balanced lifestyle to be without the leaky gut issues and the emotional trauma and how we manage stress, it's going crazier and crazier. Then, of course, we're fixing everything with pharmaceuticals, which we know is just making things worse, sadly, because it's not actually helping the problem. It's not getting to the underlying cause. It's just trying to put a Band-Aid on it. And then we've frankly messed up our food supply a lot in this country. So the pesticides and all that fun stuff, that's causing a leaky gut issue as well. But I just don't think overall that we, especially in the United States, are addressing the actual root cause for why this stuff is occurring. And we just go, well, you're destined for disease, slap on some pharmaceuticals and call it a day, because there's no real health in people. I mean, real money in people being healthy. There's money in people being just sick enough that they have to keep taking the pharmaceuticals and the medications. And so I think there's that whole, like, who's making money if you're well?
Exactly. Like, who's making money if you're well and happy and balanced and peaceful? It's like, I mean, Kirstin, with you and I, we are in industries, we're not looking for return customers. It's like,
I want them to fix it and go.
Exactly. Like, get better and go.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, it's a really important thing. It's, it's like with the women that I coach, it's like, well, why do I feel all this pressure to, restrictively diet and be thin, and that I'm, don't look good enough, and that I'm not enough? I'm like, who's making money off of that? Yeah. That is a huge industry. And
especially for women
with medical stuff, right? That's a huge industry to just be alive enough and sick enough to continue to consume things that make the industry keep going.
Yep. And we stay in the belief system that once you started taking a medication, you have to be on it for the rest of your life. And we've had doctors tell our clients that they're all going to die by the end of our program. And I'm like, what? Like, that's insane conversation. And then the doctors are fascinated when they're off all their meds and they're feeling so much better. And they're like, well, how did you do that? How did that happen? My mother's doctor, because my mother has Hashimoto's, we got her off all our meds. We helped support her through all that. We got her on the right ways that were going to work for her and her emotional components and stress and all that other fun stuff. Her doctor asked her to have me write her up an explanation of why it worked. And I was like, and I was thrilled that she wanted to learn, but she fought us through the entire process of, you can never get off of thyroid medication and you can never get off these things. And again, I have to put out there, I am not a doctor, so I cannot legally just tell you to stop taking medication a doctor has prescribed for you, but I can show you how our other clients have done it. But they get stuck in this idea, and they're taught that way. The basic medical doctors are taught, once you're on medication, you're on it. And there's really no way off of it.
Yeah, and I think that mindset is such an important thing to examine, because I mean, a similar experience. Like, I have had many women that I have coached where, a professional of some sort has told them, you have an eating disorder. You will always have an eating disorder. You are broken. There's no way to not have it. You just need to accept that and then do what you can to manage it. But I have had them be told it will not get better. And I've had people get angry that I'm suggesting that people can get better, because how dare you give people hope for something there is no hope for?
Yes, we've had that same conversation.
I know. It's like, but how, like, what can we do, right? If we see all these people getting better, like, how can you be in integrity and be like, oh, okay, sorry, I guess we can't get better. So it's like, and for anyone who's listening and disagrees, that's fine. Like, you can totally disagree. I think conversation is really important, but I think multiple voices are important as well. Like, let's just get information. And if you see something that is contrary to what other people are saying, like, hey, if nobody can get better from this, then why is this person better?
Right.
That's something that should be said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so upsetting to me because it makes my heart hurt for people when they're in a space where they truly believe they can never fix or heal what has been happening. And, I've had discussions with medical community. We have doctors who are clients who have gotten past their autoimmune disease. And we have nurses and other physicians and other practitioners who came to us because they couldn't figure it out without it. And then now they're all going back to their practices and they're starting to utilize this stuff with their clients and their patients, which I get so excited about because it's helping exponentially. But a lot of them come to us truly believing what they were told, which is, you are broken, you can never fix this. And that's a shame, but it makes my heart hurt because I'm in a bunch of those, and I know you are too. All these Facebook groups that are supposed to be these support groups, and all it's supporting is this broken concept that you were broken for good. And they get, you're right, angry. And I think some people, and see if this has ever happened to any of your clients, they get better, and sometimes they get better really quickly, and they almost don't believe it's real. And then they get angry when they realize it is, because of all the years they spent broken or thinking they were broken. And there are times I have to work them through that emotional component, that anger, because they let all the money and all the time and all the pharmaceuticals and all the breaking that they did further than they needed to, that they didn't have to. And that's sad to me too. But I was there. Years I was broken. I was upset. I was confused. I was sick. And I was like, no, looking back now, it's painful for me to look at pictures back from 10 and 12 and 15 years ago. Because I remember the emotional stress and the upset I was and how I was feeling bad about myself all the time. Because I was broken and I was sick and I didn't understand why. And it messed with my identity.
Such an important thing to bring up. And I think it does have a lot to do with identity. So it's like, and it's really interesting that you bring that up because I've had the exact same experience, right? I'm thinking of one woman in particular who went through my program, and she was a binge eater for 35 years, binge eating and bulimic. And she was done in like a couple of weeks into my program. She was just absolutely done. And she was thrilled at first. And then the next few weeks was just working through this incredible anger that she felt, that she believed that she was broken all that time, all the money she'd spent, all the things she'd missed out on, all of, the time with people. It's just, it takes so much. And I totally get that. But I think it's really important to have that. And, I've had people ask, how do I ever forgive myself for all the things that I've missed when it was so simple to fix? And it's like going to a place of gratitude of like, wouldn't you rather have it be a simple thing that you found the right thing and now you've done it? And I think it's important to release that identity. You don't have to have that identity anymore of being broken and having this thing forever. And you have your life back, and we do the best that we can with the information that we have. I think that's an important part of like that forgiveness is, I know for me, I missed out on so many things with an eating disorder and when I thought that I couldn't get better, but I was doing the best that I could with that knowledge. I'm glad to have better knowledge now, but sometimes we blame our old selves for not acting with our current selves information. It's like, you didn't know how to get better yet. So I just wanted to like pop in with that because it's so important, just like that grace for yourself of, hey, you did the best that you could with what you had. And if you found a solution, that's beautiful. And you know what? You found it sooner than later, and you made a decision and you moved forward, and that's also important.
Yeah, and simple isn't always easy. And I think people confuse those two terms as well. Yeah. Just because it was simple didn't mean that it was going to be the easiest way to find, because there was too many other people around you who were giving you the wrong information, which they may have believed was true and correct. And I have to believe that so many of the doctors and people out there that are giving people what I believe to be the wrong information to heal, they're not doing it intentionally to hurt people. I think that they so truly believe they're giving you the help that they need and they're giving you the answers you need, which makes it that much more confusing for people because these other people are very genuine in their need to help. But so many of our clients, one of the techniques that I've used with people who get into that space is I have them write a letter back to their self before and forgive them and let them out of the thing and then burn the letter, which is super
beautiful.
But so many people go through, I have them write it and then read it out loud to themselves as if they were talking to their other self, their younger self, and then burn it. And it's amazing the transformation that it has, because they separate the people and be like, okay, you did with what you could exactly what you were saying. And it's just so upsetting when you realize the number of different emotions you go through at that point. And then people get really confused, because then they're like, well, who am I now? Like, I'm free of this. What does that mean of me? How many opportunities do I have now? And that's also scary sometimes for them too.
Yeah. I call it a really fun problem. I'm like,
right?
Isn't that a fun problem to say, wow, I have $10,000 back in my pocket a year. I have 4 hours a day back in my life. I can be present with people. What a fun problem. Yeah. Like, what do you want to do?
I know, it's like winning the lottery and you're like, what do I do with all the money? It's just the emotional, physical lottery at this point. What are the possibilities, and what can you do with all of this? And then how can you help someone else realize what you've figured out now? And that's the exponential healing piece too, is when they start to heal each other, or they start to give other people hope and opportunity. And they get to see that, because I believe we all went through whatever we went through for some specific reason, and you're going to choose to learn that lesson and do something, or you're not. But if you've healed and you've learned a new way to do it, letting people know that is also, I think, part of the healing journey for you too, to help other people see it too.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that we're in the age where sharing information is such a simple thing, right? It's like, hey, you know what? Like, let's get on a YouTube video, let's talk to friends, let's make a post. So it's like, whether you have autoimmune disorder or not, just for you to know that, oh, okay, like when we hear about it, because I know that before I had an eating disorder, the thing that I heard, conventional wisdom, was, oh, you have an eating disorder because you have, emotional problems, and then you just have it for the rest of your life. Like, that was the knowledge that was just floating around. And one thing that I would love to see happen is the household knowledge about eating disorders to change.
Right.
And I think that that's probably something that is part of your mission too, right? For like the sort of like the common person who doesn't have the issue to just know, like, oh yeah, autoimmune disorders, that's like when your body starts attacking yourself, and you can just, deal with this and deal with that and then get better.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the idea that I have this because I'm not smart enough, or my willpower isn't better, or it's this thing that I'm all doing wrong and I deserve this, and all of those ideas that are just these self-defeating prophecies that keep going. It's not your fault necessarily. You just didn't have all the right tools or the pieces in place to put your puzzle together that was going to work for you. And just because this exact formula worked for your sister's best friend's hairdresser doesn't mean the exact formula is going to work for you too, but you have to customize it to your needs and your stuff. But essentially the same pieces are laid out, just your puzzle made to go together a little bit differently. So it's not your fault necessarily, and you're not, not smart enough or whatever those pieces are. You just didn't have all the pieces for you right now.
Yeah. That's why I'm so glad there are people like you in the world and what you do, because it's so important to have guidance in that. Like, I mean, I had a woman that had been a binge eater for 29 years. And her thing was just like, I'm either going to live with this for the rest of my life, or I'm going to get help. And she was somebody who was the kind of person who never asked for help. She did everything on her own. But you know what? She's not a binge eater anymore, and she's free. So I'm really glad that you do what you do, because like you said, those missing pieces of the puzzle, you don't always see those on your own. Like having somebody who's been there, who knows what to do, who has this experience, this wealth of knowledge, to be able to say, hey, here's the missing piece, by the way. Oh, you're not seeing this over here. You're totally not aware of this. Let's bring this in. Are you willing to see this another way? Like, all of that is so important. And that's why we have each other, you guys. It's like you will have things in your life that you can never see on your own. Like, you have to have somebody else. And then when you have somebody who has expertise, then they can, with their expertise, be able to, in an educated way, say, oh, here's the missing piece. I know that because of all these other people that I've helped. So
we know what rocks to look under. We know what it means. We're not misinterpreting that this symptom means that you've screwed up and all this stuff is going wrong. That's actually a good sign things are getting better, but you know what to look for. And we're also not emotionally attached necessarily to what's going on for you internally either. So we can look at it in a way that's not going to have the same impact than the way you're looking at it. So, again, it's a lot easier to look at somebody else and see what's going on than them themselves. But teaching them how to turn that mirror around and learn what that means is amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, not doing it on your own. I mean, so many of our clients were I white knuckled it for so long and I tried to figure it out on my own. And I've done this program because of this book or this blog I was following or this other thing. And they couldn't get there. And I'm like, you just needed one more step, one more person to help you up to get up over that hump that you've been beating yourself up over for years, which isn't helping, as we know.
And you guys be proud of yourself for all the things that you've done, right? Yep. Like I have so many women come to me with all this regret of all the stuff they've tried that hasn't worked. But you know what? All the stuff you've tried that hasn't worked got you here to the solution, to what works. So be like, again, that grace for yourself, like go back to, wow, I kept going. I kept trying. I kept following that spark in me that said there has to be a way to be better. And that's the thing that led you to the solution that worked.
Yeah, because they didn't give up on themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a big deal. Like celebrate that. Yeah. So, Kirstin, anything that you would say is sort of like still on your mind, in your heart to sort of share in our conversation today? Anything else that you wanted to voice to, or do you feel like our conversation is complete?
I think we pretty much hit all of it. It's just, if you're not finding the answers, reaching out and asking for help does not make you weak, does not make you less of a person. That actually, I believe it makes you stronger to say, I need something and I need help. And getting it is amazing. And that's what your body's looking for at this point. So, I mean, I know you're working with people in a very similar way as far as helping the best you surface, and you learn what's going on and you don't feel like you're in this dark corner of a place anymore in the shadows. So come out into the light. It's actually a lot more fun, because I was that girl for the longest time where I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. And
me too.
So I know I had to go and get more help but it's just stepping up and claiming yourself.
Yeah, love that. That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being on. Kirstin has an amazing webinar that is free that she provides for people. There's a link in the show notes or on this post to that, so you guys can check that out. Thank you so much for being on the show and for sharing your beautiful expertise and for what you do in the world.
Yep. Well, thank you for having me on. And I'm looking forward to doing some other stuff with you guys too.
Yeah, let's keep playing. So this is Kirstin and Lydia, the lifestyle coach, signing off. Bye, guys. Mwah.
You have so many options. You can watch more videos. You can subscribe for new videos every Monday. You can even join our Facebook group with an amazing support community.